All right, we're live. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good night, wherever you're at in this world. It's Dr. Rob Kiltz. It's Conversations with Kiltz, or Carnivore Conversations, but our topics go about health and wellness. And I'm really excited about having Brian Sanders, a filmmaker, Food Lies, and we're going to talk about Food Lies today,
Mhm.
host of one of the top 5 nutrition podcasts, a Peak Human, a global speaker, graduated from UCLA. I went to USC
Mm.
close by, but I did some graduate work there. And you're also a health coach in Evolve Healthcare and co-founder of a health education company called Sapien. And you're also really active in regenerative agriculture. We're going to talk a lot about that in Nose to Tail. So, welcome, Brian. How you been?
Oh, I'm great. Thanks for having me back. Yeah.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. And I guess we should really jump in to talk about Food Lies. And maybe you could tell us about your new series, movie, and what it's about and how people can find it and get some inspiration to watch it.
Yeah, well, it's been my main project for years now. It's turned into a six-part series. So, started 5 years ago when I saw a vegan film. People may have heard of What the Health. It's one of the original. First it was Cowspiracy. Well, there's many, right?
Yeah.
It's Cowspiracy, What the Health, and there was Game Changers is the newest one. So, well, I started earlier than that. I changed my life doing the opposite of a vegan diet, right? So I started eating more meat, more animal foods, got healthier. So I saw What the Health and got pretty angry actually because I lost both my parents when I was about 30 from eating, I think, from eating the food pyramid diet and just following the standard recommendations that just led them to prediabetes and chronic disease. And so, yeah, I had my own health troubles. I was just following the food pyramid diet for my whole life.
So let's say you graduated UCLA with a degree in mechanical engineering, and obviously now you're a health and wellness aficionado and expert around the globe, and we honor you for that. Tell us a
Mhm.
little bit about how you got there.
Yeah, it was a circuitous path. I think the engineering helped me get a good start on the foundations of, yeah, doing science and looking at the root cause of problems, and kind of led me to realize that what we're doing is not science. Then it's not a healthcare system, it's a sick care system, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure everyone knowing, everyone watching or listening kind of understands that we're in a sick care system and they're just putting band-aids and no one's looking at the root cause of problems, which are from diet and lifestyle. And so, yeah, I've always been into film and I've always been into being active, and I thought I was healthy until I wasn't, right? So that kind of just shook me up when I was about 30. Like I said, I lost my parents. I had to take a look at my health, and I thought I was doing everything right because I was following the food pyramid. I was
Uh-huh.
doing lean meats and all the grains and the, vegetables and the whole thing. And it wasn't serving me. I had all these different problems. I was overweight. I had joint problems. I had chronic overuse, and I had like acid reflux. I had a million things, allergies, and the minute I changed to a more animal-based diet, they all went away, and I just felt like a new person. My whole body composition changed. So that's what led me down this path. Quit my job, just went all in on this stuff. Eventually teamed up with Dr. Gary. That was Evolve Healthcare. Started doing health coaching stuff, working with patients. Started making the film. I went a little bit out of order, but yeah, I started making the film. It was just something that I was obsessed with. I just read every book, went to lectures, listened to podcasts, looked at the nutrition research. It was just all I did for years and years, and what I still do. And interviewing all these great people for the film and for my podcast. So it kind of just came out of nowhere.
Why is it so confusing, health and wellness via nutrition? Because I was just reading a recent journal from an expert opinion in OBGYN that women that are pregnant should eat the my pregnancy plate, which is fruits and vegetables, seeds and nuts, lean meat, no red meat. Three-quarters of it was carbohydrate, plant-based. And I'm sure you came across all of this in your research for your series. Why is there such a confusion in what we should eat?
Well, I know exactly why. It's a hard reality of nature that plant foods are really profitable to process. I boiled it down to that. So that is a truth of nature, that they are very profitable to process, and everything kind of stems from that. And it started, 12,000 years ago with agriculture, and the pharaohs and the rulers could accumulate all the wealth by saving up all the grains and storing them and taking taxes. And it all really stems from there. I actually did a presentation on this recently at KetoCon here in Austin, and it was called Exposing the $1 Trillion Agenda Against Red Meat. And I went into the entire details of it and how it goes from there. I won't do the whole thing again, but if you could see how that extends out, where once people realize that they could make a lot of money off of processing plant foods, that's still what they do today. What is Bill Gates doing? What is James Cameron, who produced Game Changers, doing? He has a $140 million investment in pea protein, and then he comes out with a vegan propaganda film telling you to eat fake meat and pea protein. So it's always about the money. It's always about the power, the control. Same thing, right? How do leaders lead? They with the power.
And it's sad because the power, interesting enough, the power is passed on generationally. So the same people that were in power 12,000 years ago are somehow still the same people in power today. There's the hierarchy. Look at the English hierarchy of the queen and the kings and the royalty. And the same thing somehow is happening in the rest of the world. It's no different. How do we communicate? I'm a physician. So many of my patients are sick from exactly what you said, processed food, or ultimately lean meat, no red meat, lots of fruits and vegetables, and 3 to 6 meals a day. And the hardest part is to have this conversation. And I obviously, like you, am really gung ho about health and wellness and our nutrition and a game changing idea in health coaching. What do you think the best way to approach this is? Because obviously, fighting the lies, I'm not sure how well that works. How do we get to share the story with more people?
Well, yeah, there's a lot to it. That's why I'm making the film. I think on one side, and sort of like a self-indulgent answer, is to make a 6-part series that will hopefully be on Netflix and be seen by millions of people. So that's one side, is you need to get the information out there and expose the lies. But I guess on an individual level, or just something that people can do, is I think it's just a bottom up thing. It's never going to happen from the top down. Everything from the top down is for their benefit. Quote, they, right? The establishment, whatever they are, the powers that be, when it comes down from them, and that's what you hear in the media and the mainstream, it always benefits them. And it's almost the opposite of what they say will benefit you. If you do kind of the opposite of what they want, you usually end up better, right? It's kind of like a rule of thumb. They say avoid salt, I eat salt. They say avoid red meat, I eat. It's just always the opposite. They just it makes sense though, right? There's always been kind of this ruling class, and they've always had to keep the peasants in line, and they want to stay the ruling class. So, yeah.
The peasants, the prisoners, the slaves, and the soldiers ultimately are fed the mush, but the masters eat the meat. And interesting enough, red fatty meat is much more expensive than lean meats, which is very interesting. And what's your take on consumption of fat and the concern about carnivore and cholesterol and heart disease? Maybe you could share your research and knowledge on that with those watching and listening today.
Yeah, the ribeye. The ribeye is the most expensive. It's the most desirable cut with all the fat. Yeah, I mean, again, opposite of what you've been told. It makes sense though, because for their highly processed products to be bad, for their highly processed products to be good, your meat has to be bad. That there always has to be this kind of enemy and this two-sided thing. And that's actually a big theme of the film series, is that we're fighting the wrong enemy. And it's really obvious that all that you hear is going against what's true, because they're making all the money. And so specifically with the fat and the cholesterol, that is a long story that goes back to the 50s. The short version is Eisenhower had a heart attack, and they needed to figure out why. This is also when they were smoking 2 packs a day. You got like your baby in the room, and they're smoking cigarettes, and they're eating the margarine and the Crisco, which is a whole nother story. And they started getting all these processed foods, but really, again, the blame was put on the wrong thing. So yes, we were getting more and more processed foods in our diet. We're getting more and more seed oils and margarine and fake fats and trans fats and plant-based fats. And then there was this other guy who was like, hey, maybe it's all these processed sugars and flours and grains and oils is a problem. His name was Thomas Yudkin. And then Ansel Keys was like, oh, but what if it's all the fat? And basically, the quick story is Ansel Keys won by using a lot of spurious correlations. And, he did the 7-country study, and, it's an old story. But it was really great for the food industry. And I think they're looking back, you could say, oh, maybe we didn't have all the science back then. But when you kind of look at just how the world works, and we were talking about the ruling class, and maybe, they kind of pushed it in that direction, right? I don't want to get conspiratorial, but maybe it was pushed in that direction where all of a sudden fat is bad. And now all the food companies and all these giant organizations that go even beyond just companies. I mean, it's like the entire United States is subsidizing corn, wheat, and soy. So this really opened the door to all these processed foods once the decree was that fat is bad or cholesterol is bad.
But the interesting part is we have a lot of scientists and doctors that are kind of at the forefront of doing the research and writing the papers and publishing this. You would think that they had the intelligence and the knowledge to be able to sift through this in order to answer the question for their patients, which they do have the Hippocratic oath to care for and do no harm. What's behind the fact that they don't hear this and they continue to perpetuate the food lies?
Yeah, that's another long story too. You got to trace it back to even, wow, how the medical schools were even developed and who funded them. And you can do a search for Rockefeller medicine. It's hard to find because Google will probably block it. Rockefeller medicine is a great little presentation done where a guy named Stephen Corbett, I think his name is, did a whole thing and explained how these were funded, how the schools were funded, how these textbooks got to be. The fact that they had a successful smear campaign against natural medicine, like using food and diet and lifestyle as medicine, and it became the term even quack, right? That anyone who practiced natural medicine was a quack, and that was a very purposeful disinformation, smear campaign against natural healing, anything that wasn't surgeries or pills. So you can go as far back as you want, but this still is perpetuated in all, again, goes back to the money, and all of the money that's made by all the big food industries and pharmaceutical industries. They can just perpetuate this. They have all the money. It really stems from the fact that processed foods are so profitable, that they have so much money to do the lobbying, to fund the studies, to do marketing campaigns saying their food is good. The Coca-Cola starting initiatives like the ILSI that was, Energy Balance Consortium, and the ILSI is saying that, oh, it's just calories and you should drink Coca-Cola. And it's just, if you're fat, it's because you're a dummy and you didn't count calories well enough, or that you didn't exercise enough, because, our Coke is fine. You just have to count calories. So, my God, we could spend all day talking about why this system is the way it is.
Yeah, it's sad. And I know that I've been chastised in my community for talking about it and reprimanded at the medical school, hospital, and also to our licensing board in New York State. So there's so many pieces of the puzzle going on. Now, tell us a little bit about your work in regenerative agriculture, grazing animals, and there's a question here regarding grass-fed versus grain-fed, and you might or may not be able to answer that question, but it has to do with agriculture and beef and cattle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my company's nose to tail. So I have firsthand experience of not making money off of meat. I'll tell you, like, how to not make money is start a meat company. That it's basically a negative money. pit.
You like
So
the animals. That it's you do it for the animals.
yeah, I don't know why I do it. I'm the only dummy that's trying to do that. I mean, looking back, I should have just made some processed food like keto bar or something, and then I could have marked it up, 8x, and then actually made a profit. So I'm very much the hard way learning that you don't make money off of agriculture about growing animals, and much less growing them well. Uh, so regenerative ag would be the best way to do it, right? This is how animals naturally should be raised, and you move them around on the grass and they stay on grass their whole life, and it actually regenerates the soil, puts carbon back in the soil. Really high level view. It's what we all should be doing, but it all needs to be. It's really hard to change. We'd have to change all these subsidies. We'd have to change so many things to get there. We'd have to stop growing all this corn, wheat, and soy, and then we'd have use some of that land to grow animals on, and then they produce manure naturally, and they eat the grass and stimulate growth, and this whole system that works perfectly well, and it's what we used before all of these super industrial extractive techniques came around. So that's the high level view of regenerative ag.
Uh-huh.
And I could talk about grain fed versus grass fed, absolutely. So I definitely would say that having an animal grass finished its whole life, especially eating a diverse diet of all different forages, is definitely the healthiest. And I interviewed a Dr. Stefan van Vliet who studies this, and they look with a mass spectrometer, and they look at all these compounds that are in that meat when you grow it well. But I also say, don't be afraid necessarily of grain-fed meat, because I know people have budgetary constraints, and I just don't like, the fear mongering, especially like I'm in a position where my company, is grass-fed. So I should be saying, oh, grass-fed or nothing, buy my stuff. Absolutely not. I am buy what you can afford. And it can be better if it's for grass finish, and it can be even better if it's regenerative, because then you could even regenerate the land and do something good. And I think it's absolutely great to support farmers too, support the ranchers doing this. Then I feel pretty like happy paying extra for the good meat, because I'm like, oh, take my money, like you're doing a good thing. This is great.
What percentage of cattle is grazed on regenerative agriculture? Is it substantially growing? Is it slow growing?
Hmm.
Are there any subsidies to help the farmers doing that?
I don't think there's really any programs. Maybe there's some private programs that are popping up. It's a very small percentage. But the good thing is all cattle's all steer and cows spend the first 2/3 of their life on grass, right? So if they go to the feedlot, at least they're out on grass for the first 2/3 of their life. They're in the cow calf operation. The problem is most, above 90% go to the feedlot. And then there's single digit percentage remains on grass
Mhm,
and,
mhm.
does it the right way.
So there's really not I mean, farmers are the ones that are probably suffering the most here, and the middlemen and it's a commodity basically. That the money's made at the top level and not at the a lower level. And all of this, even plants, the farmer is probably suffering a tremendous amount. And how about larger? I mean, these larger feedlots. So so essentially, what I think I'm trying to answer
Mhm.
for the community is that ultimately, if you're eating grain fed versus grass fed, you're not likely going to notice any substantial change in your health because of that. But what you're saying is that the overall health of the earth is going to be improved, and the health of the cattle is going to be improved because they're foraging on what's natural to them.
Well, that and there are some health benefits. I don't think they're just like substantial. Like they've done studies that show specifically like the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio is better if it's grass fed compared to grain fed. And then some people will say, you could accumulate pesticides or toxins if they're eating, all the bad, leftover grains and stuff like that. So maybe I don't know if you can feel it. Some people, this is very controversial. Like some people are very one way or the other on it, and I'm kind of just in the middle, saying you could get some health benefits from. Well, you would from Stefan von Vliet's research, you do have these health benefits from the more all the compounds, these secondary compounds they're called, that are in the good regenerative grass finished meat, because they're eating this diverse diet and they're getting so many more nutrients out of the forage.
Well, it's interesting because our the community is eating a tremendous amount of processed food and a lot of plant material, more and more to the plant side versus the animal side. And so, which part of it is really the cause of most health and ill health issues that you've noticed in your research?
Oh, yeah, definitely the plant side. That's a problem. That's why it's just the backwards world, right? That's why it's almost everything is the opposite of what they say. That's kind of what I'm saying here with the grass-fed versus grain-fed or even processed meats. I actually don't have a big problem with sausage or bacon. It's like it's just meat. It's like we got to talk about like what really matters, right? What's going to move the
Hmm.
needle? And what would move the needle is not eating a whole bunch of bread and corn and wheat and soy and fake meat and just trash. That will move the needle. Then if you're, 98% of the way there, if you get your diet dialed in and are eating animal foods and being thoughtful about the plant foods you include, and then yeah, then you can get to the last couple percent, right? If you get like the good stuff from your farmer's market.
So where did you in your research on food and put the cause of cancers? Do you have any particular expertise in what you've learned about what the researchers think is the cause of cancer?
Not super specifically. I've interviewed some great people like Dr. Thomas Seyfried, who he calls it the metabolic view of cancer, or
Hmm.
and so I kind of share his opinion that I don't know, I don't remember it's a percentage, but something around 80% could be metabolically driven causes, and that would be stemmed from eating the wrong foods, eating the highly processed foods. There's also, for sure, environmental toxins. There's pesticides, glyphosates, there's heavy metals, there's radiation, there's a million other things. But I think largely it's from diet and lifestyle. Oh, of course, the lifestyle stuff too, right? Like not getting enough sleep, not, sedentary, all this other stuff.
So ultimately, a high plant-based diet ultimately means a lot of sugar, which means a lot of metabolic disorder, which ultimately is Seyfried's and Otto Warburg's take on the cause of cancer. Is it's mitochondrial damage, most likely. Any thoughts? I talk a lot about fat. There's a question there about fat and burning fat and eating more fat in our nutrition.
Mhm.
Have you found anything interesting on that?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I've run on fat for pretty much 6 years, and I think it's amazing. I did a pentathlon actually. I was trying to do a decathlon and do all 10 events, but I couldn't find one. So I did a pentathlon. I didn't even eat that day. It was like I just showed up, did the event. Everyone there was sucking down those little goo packets of sugar, and I didn't even eat. I think I ate a piece of liver, like kind of as a goof, while I was at the
Well,
track meet, a piece of raw liver. But I did, the what was it, the 200-meter dash, like long jump, through the javelin, did all these events and ran a mile at the end. I beat everyone except for one person in the mile. This was in Toronto at a Masters track, big championship meet. So anyway, yeah, I love running on fat. It's amazing.
well, my theory is we always run on fat. Sugar is never the energy for the mitochondria, but sugar is a glycan, which is critical for glycosylation, which is the addition of a sugar to a protein. Without that, we die. But it's kind of another interesting talk. Maybe we can talk about it sometime because I'm
Mhm,
convinced that sugar is we're not meant to ever consume a plant or sugar in our natural diet, most likely, because there's no essential carbohydrate because our body is able to make glycans. But it is kind of an interesting topic that I think we could talk about at
mm,
some other time.
mhm,
What's your thoughts on fasting? And then we'll get onto lifestyle because I really enjoy your lifestyle thoughts and ideas. But fasting,
yeah. Fasting. So I like to do sort of the intermittent fasting, I guess you call it. I don't eat breakfast. I eat probably in a 7-hour eating window. So I eat around 1 p.m. and 8 p.m., something like that. A big lunch filled with bacon, beef sausage, eggs, avocado. I do some yogurt, just a lot of stuff like that. And I do
Freshly
fermented.
made? Is it all
Oh,
freshly
oh
made?
yeah. Oh yeah. I cook everything myself, and it's all just single ingredient stuff. I mean, sausage, it has, a few seasonings in it. But basically this single ingredient stuff, cheese, stuff like that. And then for dinner, I'll do like a steak or lamb, and I do some side dishes, some like sauteed onions and mushrooms. And but yeah, I love just the two meal a day, mostly animal foods, and I just am not hungry otherwise. And I think it's just a good balance of having sort of a somewhat normal life and eating schedule, and just having a good amount of time not eating.
Where do you put the snacks in there? Do you get snacks, or is it just that sort of lunch and the dinner and nothing in between?
I
What's
don't
your
think I
thoughts on
had a snack
snacking?
in 4 years. I probably haven't had a snack. It doesn't interest me. I don't even get it. It's kind of hard because I mean, one of my products is sort of a meat snack. It's biltong, right? It's like a beef jerky. I don't ever eat it. I'm like, when am I going to eat this? I don't snack. The only time I would eat it is I just make it part of my meal. But yeah, I just think that snacking is such a big problem with normal life and culture, and what's going on with the health problems. People are just
S-
always eating.
So there are all these keto carnivore snacks. Where do you think they fall on sort of? I always wonder if it's going to be that sort of that sneaky little thing to get us back to snacking by picking up these keto
Mm.
carnivore snacks. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I personally don't really use them, but yes, I think they're good for people transitioning. I also think they're good for traveling. So the
Yes,
only time I do eat my own biltong is on the airplane. And
cool.
so yeah, I mean, I think it's useful. Absolutely. It's just yeah, I don't yeah, I'm yeah, I just don't like that idea that we always have to eat.
I tend to like to bring my leftovers if I'm going to have a snack. I do one meal and I might have a little snack from time to time, but it's always like my leftover steak or a little bit of salami or something like that. But I think that's really
Mhm.
an unnecessary thing. Do you do any more than 24-hour fasting?
I
And what?
don't. I don't. I think I might be too lean. I kind of this idea of there could be different diets based on your journey, right? And I think some people, yeah, maybe even go overboard with the fasting or with doing OMAD for too long. I just think you can you go on this journey. You need to get away from the normal diet, right? And then you can get a lot of good things done, and then maybe see how you can optimize from there.
And the other question is, you're really into lifestyle, and I know you love to exercise, you love to move, but you also a lot of integrate sort of a lot of mindfulness and things of creativity. Tell us a little bit about your lifestyle hacks and how
Mhm.
critical they are to health and wellness.
Yeah, super important. Sleep, I think sleep is one of my number one things that I do consistently. I actually figured out I'm more consistent with getting 8 hours of sleep than anything else I do. It's my number one most consistent thing. I always will get 8 hours sleep. And if something goes wrong, I will take a nap and try to like make up for it. So I'm big believer in sleep, especially brain health, for immune health. I see things break down. I see people who even eat well, and then they're up, they miss sleep for a few days in a row for a week, and then they get sick. I haven't been sick in 7 or 8 years, so I think there's something huge there. I do my vitamin D reading session. That's kind of my thing. Is every day around noon, I get out there in the Texas heat and I read a book by the pool, and I do at least 20 minutes on my front and 20 minutes on my back and get that vitamin D. It's just a ritual, right? Like this is,
Nice.
I don't know if it's called a hack, it's a ritual, whatever it is. This is something very big in my life. And the last thing kind of is the movement side, that I'm very interested in efficiency. Maybe it's that mechanical engineering thing, that background where I just love to be efficient and effective. And I just think like steady state cardio, like sort of like jogging is kind of for the birds. I just think it's sort of a waste of time, waste of energy. I don't think it does much for you other than kind of break down your joints. And I'm a fan of sprinting and lifting weights and just it's these are ancestral ways. I don't we didn't just jog. I mean, we did do some persistence hunting perhaps, and you do like sort of a fast walk for a long period.
Hmm.
Oh, but I'm down for walks. Yeah, I go for walks. If I don't work out, I can go for a walk. That's great. Absolutely. But I sprint, walk, or lift weights or play sports. But then with the weightlifting thing, I actually have my own thing where I only lift for 25 minutes twice a week. So it's less than an hour per week. Yet I've had great results and maintain muscle mass and very low body fat by doing drop sets to failure. If people have heard of that, I use dumbbells and weighted dips and weighted pull-ups and stuff like that. And going to failure, I think, is a really effective way to get a workout very quickly. And part of why I like it so much is because it's so easy to do and enjoyable. And it's not just some people think if I need to work out, it needs to be an hour or more in the gym 5 days a week, or some big thing. It's this big ordeal, and then they just end up not doing it. But if my thing is only 25 minutes twice a week, I always do it. You know what I mean?
And ultimately, walking is probably the thing that human beings have been able to do more than running. We can walk anything down probably for days and days and days. And in using your own body weight and doing simple calisthenics, push-ups, sit-ups, deep knee bends, and walking probably is a healthy lifestyle for so many out there. Would you say?
Absolutely. You don't need to make it complicated. You don't need the gym membership. You can get so much done with your body weight and doing those types of things. Sprinting too. I mean, I just love to sprint. Humans sprinted or walked. I think those are the two things. And then the lifting weights. I mean, that's just a bonus. Like
Hmm.
if you're some people are very into CrossFit or bodybuilding. Absolutely, that's a whole different category of people. And go do your thing. Absolutely. But if you're talking about like 80% of the people, they just need to do some movement a couple times a week.
Yeah, get creative. You mentioned you're reading 20 minutes on each side. Is that every day? And what tell us a little about the books you're reading and the things that inspire you.
Oh man, well, it's all health books, really. People ask me, "Oh, what are you reading in fiction or this or that?" I'm like, "No, it's just I've just read every health book I've ever heard of. Maybe there's some that have slipped by, but yeah, a lot of authors send them to me, and then I do a lot of interviews for Peak Human, my podcast. So I have to keep up on my reading just to keep up with my guests. And yeah,
What's the thing that inspires you most in this journey of health and wellness?
well, I guess I'm sort of a communicator, right? I'm a mechanical engineer. I don't have a doctor in anything. I have a engineering degree and I work with a doctor as a health coach and I make a film. So what inspires me most is just communicating this stuff to other people. So I like to digest all this information, to use a nice food pun, and get it out to people and try to package it in simple ways. I try to do that on my Instagram and make it kind of fun and interesting. And in the film, right? It's just like a lot of people, well, most people aren't going to sit down and do all the things that I've done, read the books, go to the lectures, open up the papers, scientific papers. Like, I mean, it's a lot. So, man, I just love to digest it and package it for people.
And in doing your series on food lies, what was the biggest obstacle that sort of was the challenge in creating this series?
Well, it's been 5 years. So really we've never had money to do this correctly. I think it's actually a great thing because I've kind of rewritten it probably 5 times in the 5 years, and it keeps getting better and it keeps changing because I learn more. And I think yeah, you have to kind of go on a journey before you're ready to produce, your end results. And I think some people, they just get caught. They're like, "Oh, I did this and it worked." And then that's it. I think that's what happens with plant-based people. They're like, Oh yeah, you cut out a lot of processed garbage and then you feel better and then you think it's the key to everything until you have nutrient deficiencies and everything catches up with you. Right? So I think you a lot of times you need to like try different things, go down different paths, go on the journey. And so yeah, now we just released the intro on YouTube, so people should check it out. We spent over a year just on the intro. Not that it was the only thing we were doing, but we went all out. We handmade every shot. Like we're going big. Like this is trying to get on Netflix. We want to get to the biggest population possible. I don't think there's ever been a big health film other than a vegan film that's made it to the mainstream, right? I mean, I guess there were some Michael Pollan films that kind of were big like 10 years ago, but really I don't think there's ever been a health film that was accurate, that actually talked about animal foods being good and that vegan is not the way to go, has ever made it to the mainstream. So man, I've been interviewing people for 5 years. We had to redo interviews. I went to Africa last year, spent time with the Hadza and the Maasai, filmed with them. Been all over North America with different ranchers, different scientists. We're still getting a few more little interviews. So it's just been quite a journey. But yeah, check out the intro on Food Lies YouTube.
And we're going to put the intro right on a link onto this conversation for sure. And I got a chance to watch it a little earlier, and it just visiting the Hutsa looked like it was really an exciting adventure. Tell us a little bit about some insight there that'll get us inspired to watch more.
Oh yeah. So the opening shot is me running with the Maasai. There's
Oh,
a
the
bunch of
Maasai,
Maasai
got it,
kids I'm running
got it.
with. But yeah, the
Yeah.
Hadza as well. So, oh wow, Hadza, they're the hunter gatherers. Maasai, they are pastoralists and they drink blood and milk and eat meat, famously the men. And so we did that with them, which was amazing. We woke up early and they had their huts, they move around, and so they had these like mud huts and grass, and they have all their cows in the middle, and we drank the blood and we got the fresh raw milk, and it was actually decent. It tasted pretty good. It was fun because it was sort of just like a tourist thing for us, but it was not a tourist thing at all. It was just them eating breakfast. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like they were putting on a show for us, like I've seen that. Like I'm from Hawaii, they do luau's and it's just a show. No, these dudes were getting breakfast. Like they were out there and they just took it and they're like, no, we're drinking. Like we need our food. Amazing health, just tall, strong people, big white teeth, no cavities, no problems. Amazing stuff. And then the Hadza, 3 days with them. We two different Hadza groups, and we got to go hunting with them and get some animals and eat them. And it was pretty awesome. They came back with this little deer the first day because we didn't get to go with them. We got there too late, and they opened it up for us and they started slicing it up. They cut the guts out, fed them to the dogs, or the dogs stole them. I don't remember how it went down. And then we started eating the liver immediately. They got some fresh liver, had all kinds of guts on it and everything, and they just like hand it to me. I eat it raw, and they're like, "Oh, this guy actually ate it," And then they cooked the rest of it, and we even ate the brains. Actually, this little deer, they cooked it, and then this kid, he was with adults. He was maybe like 13, and he was gnawing on the head, getting all the meat off the head. Then they cracked open the skull and you scoop out the pudding, basically, eat those brains. So yeah, that was pretty wild.
It is I'm sure in Africa and all over the world, the same thing's happening, where the infiltration of modern lifestyles and diets, how are they affecting the Maasai and the Hutsa?
Oh, wow. Yeah. It's kind of bad, actually, because one of the Hadza groups was really exposed to tourists and they keep getting treats and like everyone brings them stuff. And they had really messed up teeth.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, I just don't think they were as healthy as they could be. They also don't have any land. I think the main problem is these groups don't have any land. The government pushes them off the good land, and because they make hunting or tourist, what is it called? Safari reserves, right? So that the tourists can come. The government make tons of money, and they don't care about the people whose land it is. So they push them off. So now they can't hunt all the big animals anymore. And the Hadza were, forced to, get this tiny little deer or these tiny little bush babies. They're like this big. It's like a softball, and that's what they're trying to eat. So that's a big problem. But they're also getting all these other foods like ugali, which is basically cornmeal and water. And they're having to subsist on ugali. So switching over to the Maasai, they still have their blood and milk and meat, but they can't afford, and they don't have all the abundance of cattle that they used to. They can't afford to keep killing them. At least the blood and milk is renewable resource. It's not like the animal dies because you take a little blood out of it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but still, they can't really afford to keep killing them and eating them, and they have to subsist or supplement their diet with this ugali, and it's just cornmeal and water, and it's just bad, and you can see the ill effects. And if you get like kind of closer to the city, it's almost like there's three different versions. There's the traditional living people like way out, then there's the city people, but then there's the in between. And the in between, you can see a lot of ill health because they can't afford a lot of animal foods. So they're not getting much good nutrition, and they're relying on the ugali or just a bunch of bananas, or just corn, just something, just to fill their bellies, some kind of agriculture crop that's really cheap and not very nutritious. And they kind of look like Americans. They're like hunched over, they have all the chronic disease problems. And they're also getting the oils too. They're getting these cooking oils. We went to Uganda as well, and you could see these people, they don't even have fast food. They don't have processed foods. They don't, like in Uganda, that they're so poor they can't even have these. Yet they still are getting obese by the time they're like 45, 50. I saw these ladies and they're just frying everything in these cooking oils. They get these new oils. And it was really interesting to throw one more thing in, is the Maasai that we talked to an elder, and he didn't know the science of like why seed oils are bad, or why processed foods are bad or anything like that. They're just like, oh, this is great, these are calories. Most people just like, oh, this is great, these are calories. But this elder Maasai gentleman who was super fit, active, he was like 90 something, running up a mountain. He was like, I don't trust the grocery store food. He's like, I don't trust the oil. Like, I don't trust the food that sits on the shelf. He knew through just like their ancient wisdom that if a food can just sit on a shelf, or you have this fake oil that just sits in a plastic bottle, that it's not healthy. And he was, trying to tell people like, we want the fat, we want the real, the animal fat, like cook with that, don't trust those store-bought foods. So that was interesting.
So you've been on this journey of sharing healthy living, healthy lifestyles. Assuming you're in the omnivore world, but a meat centric or animal centric nutrition. Some fruits and vegetables. Any particular things that you
Mm.
you focus on?
Yeah, I'm very animal based. I did the math. I don't think we ever need to count calories or think about all this stuff, but I did it once just to know. I was 80% animal foods. Uh, I am very careful of what plant foods I eat, and I think it's the traditional ones and the ones that, um, that I saw the Hadza eating. Like the Hadza will get berries, so they'll eat honey when they can get it, stuff like that. So that's what I'm saying. I'm on this journey, and I will eat these foods that that I think are ancestral, and I think that work for me. And so I don't eat any grains, I don't eat legumes, I don't eat nuts, I don't eat seeds, I don't eat raw vegetables, I don't eat leafy greens. But I do eat very specific things, like I said avocado, and I said sauteed mushrooms and onions, and I would eat fermented vegetables. So I eat some sauerkraut, and I do eat some fruit and a little bit of honey. So I think these are very different than it seems like, oh, this guy's just an omnivore, but it's like, no, this is like, I'm talking about like 9 types of foods that have low anti-nutrients and are prepared properly, which is what humans have always done. They've done fermenting, soaking, sprouting, all these type of methods to get rid of the anti-nutrients and make the foods safer and more bioavailable. And yeah, that's kind of what I've landed on that I think works well.
How young are you?
I'm 39.
And would you say you've been on this journey for 9 or 10 years in the health and wellness since you were
Yes.
30, you said, and you've been sharing and going around the world. would you say that you're finding some optimism in this story, or as you see the Messiah and the Hutsa, that there's some concern and things that we need to do to help protect all of our ancient peoples? And I say we're ultimately all ancient peoples
Hmm.
that we're suffering from this modern civilization of industrial foods.
Hmm. I have both. So I am worried about the other places I've visited. I visited South America, Mexico. I've visited Europe, Africa, Australia, Southeast Asia. Um, some of these cultures are just a bit behind the US. It feels like they are just getting the more of the processed foods in their diet, and they're soon going to end up like the US. I have the concerns over the actual tribes out there trying to live ancestrally, and the government moving them off their land, especially even with the Batwa, which are the pygmies, which we saw in Uganda.
Mhm.
It's very bad over there. They have no land. They're highly marginalized people. Uh, because the mountain gorillas, the government moves them out of the forest where they naturally lived and ate meat. We talked to a lady, a pygmy. She was it was six generations present. She was the great 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 grandma, and she was over 100,
Wow.
dancing around like she was dancing and stomping. And her daughter was 90. Her I think that was her youngest daughter, who was still alive, was 90, dancing around, stomping around. And they had four more generations. And the younger generations were the least healthy because they were eating the most just cheap process. Like all they had was like a bucket of beans for like the whole day. And she was telling the story of her growing up. She would eat meat 3 times a day. They lived in the forest, and she said we would eat meat 3 times a day, and now we only get meat on Christmas and Easter. It's the only time they can afford meat. So yeah, their situation is not looking good. But then there, on the opposite side, there is a very positive kind of outlook, because a lot of people are getting into this stuff. And maybe it's because I'm in Austin, or maybe it's because I'm making this film and I track these people, but I see a huge momentum in people interested in regenerative agriculture, and they're interested in animal-based diets, and they're changing their life, and they're kind of separating from society. I see this kind of divergence where a lot of people are just doubling down on processed foods and medications and just doing their thing. And then I just see this bigger group of people who are taking their health into their own hands. And again, maybe it's just because I'm self-selecting my group, but it is amazing. Like, oh man, there's huge momentum in Austin, at least.
Well, I feel it and see it. It seems like the keto carnivore world seems to be expanding. I think there's value in all sides. Adding more meat to our nutrition is really seems to be growing. I mean, just as we're seeing, the keto is still much larger Googled term than carnivore is, but that's a good sign that even if you're starting in the keto world and you're venturing between carnivore and keto, those are all really good things. What's on the horizon for you in the next 6 months or 5 years in your dreams of what? Obviously, you have this series to work on and get moving forward, but there's got to be some dream work on the side also.
Well, yeah, mainly the series. I'm just so excited about it. Like, I'm gonna go hard for 6 months and we'll get it out. That's our goal. So we're finishing it by the end of the year. That's the big goal. It's gonna take a lot of work. Uh, the nose to tail business, I really want to just keep pushing, eating meat, eating, knowing your farmer. And if you can't know your farmer, then, get it from us, and regenerative ag, and pushing that. And then I have one more thing. My big project is actually in Austin, and I'm bringing all this stuff to real life. So that's my big goal is, we do meat sales online, and we do community stuff online, right? We're online right now. We got a community. It's great. People are watching. Let's do it in person. So I actually have a property in Austin now that's a wellness center, or I don't know what it's called because I don't think it exists yet, but it has, local meat. It's not quite open yet. We had one event, but we have, fresh local meats. We have highly uh, nutritious and well prepared food, like
Mhm.
uh, even like pâtés and like charcuterie and stuff like that. We
Cool.
have events. It has an outdoor gym, has a sauna, cold plunge. You have a fire pit, and we have a grill, like the ultimate grilling area we're building out right now, and it has 4 different types of grills. So the whole idea is to get everyone in person, make this a hub. And so yeah, my ultimate dream is to have hubs around the United States and maybe world, and get people there in person, connect, right? That's what humans are supposed to do. We're supposed to be around a fire, eating meat and connecting. And I just decided to make it happen and make it a reality.
I went to my first meetup recently, the Northeast meetup with Carnivore Doctor Lisa Wiedemann and Kelly Hogan. It was really sort of a connection of like-minded people that have cured so many diseases, psychological, physical, all sorts of things. And I think the types of events that you're talking about are critical. KetoCon, Carnivore Con, all these events that are really important to share. Who's out there inspiring you in this world that's a particular um, hero in the keto carnivore world, or someone that we should really be listening to because a scientist really is doing some cutting edge stuff?
Oh wow, there's so many people. I've interviewed 200 people,
Wow.
yeah, for the film and for my podcast, and I am picky because I could just interview 200 random people too, but I've always been inspired by Mark Sisson. I have to credit him for number one because that's who I found 8, 9 years ago, and I read Primal Blueprint and changed my life. So he definitely, and he's in the film, and it's great. We played Ultimate Frisbee together in Miami, and he's just the man. But more recently, I guess I'll throw out Dr. Bill Schindler. I don't know if you've heard of this guy. Have you
Tell me a
heard of him?
little about. I've heard of him, but I don't know much about Bill.
Okay, Dr. Bill Schindler, he was just in Austin for KetoCon. I've interviewed him multiple times. He's in the film. He is a paleoanthropologist, archaeologist, food scientist. He's had his own TV show on, I think it was Discovery Channel, where he lives through each era of human history, and each episode was him living through that era with his co-host, a woman, and they only could use the tools that were available to that era of human to survive. So he was out there with a rock. The first era, it's like all they had was a rock, and they would, they had to like try to build a shelter, like crack open bones to eat marrow, and then it went to fire, then it went to a bow and arrow and all that type of stuff. So he's just doing amazing things and just kind of spreading the information of how humans should eat. And he talks about a lot of this stuff about how important animal foods were to growing our brain, becoming human, all this stuff. He's just obsessed with eating nose to tail, eating, bone marrow and the liver and the organs and the brains, even the whole story of how we became human, but also how if you do eat plant foods, how you have to prepare them properly because there's so many anti-nutrients and so many problems with them. So he goes around the world studying them too, and it's really interesting.
And for all of us moving forward, what would be some salient recommendations for sort of I don't mean it, so the regular, all of us regular people, we need some simple advice that we can just kind of take in our hand and go out there in this world and live. What would be your simple advice for most of us that may not know much about the science of food or even sort of what's going on in
Mm-hmm.
food lies, but just some inspirational concepts and ideas that you could share, sort of in some closing moments here.
Okay, I got a tagline. It is eat densely, move intensely. So eat densely means eat nutrient dense foods, which means basically animal foods. And you could see other nutrient dense foods that you could fit in there from the plant world if you'd like. And move intensely means, like I said, sprint, lift some weights, do some jumping jack, do some squats, whatever you can do, play a sport. And why I chose that tagline is it's kind of the just way better version of eat less, move more. Eat less, move more is meaningless. If it meant anything, we wouldn't be in the situation we are in. Eat less, move more is actually just kind of a recipe to be hungry. You think about it. Eat less, move more. It's like, oh wait, so that just sounds like I'm going to be starving. And that their idea is to just, that's their idea to lose weight, is just starve yourself and always be hungry and just jog and eat like plant foods and just eat a salad with no dressing. So it's pretty bad advice, but eat densely, move intensely actually means something.
And quick question on supplements. Do we need supplements? Do you think? Is there any good scientific evidence that if you eat a dense nutritional palate that you need supplements?
I do not think supplements are necessary. I'm not a fan. I could see sometimes if you are like wildly deficient, I think it's like a thing. It's almost like a medical intervention. I actually thought this recently. Instead of medications, we should be using supplements as a temporary intervention. You know what I mean? It's like real food, diet and lifestyle should be your medicine, your baseline, right, of life and nutrition and just your health. But if you have a problem, it's probably just because you're lacking in some sort of mineral, or maybe you've had years and years of metabolic damage and you're really lacking in something. So I was thinking about that. Maybe it is good to just for like an intervention, right? It's like, oh man, your copper's like way down. You can take some copper, or you could just eat some liver and oysters and get some copper. But yeah, generally, I do not think we need them.
What's your take on water? And how much water should we drink in a day? Mineral water, sparkling water, let's see, brain smart water.
Smart one.
Uh,
Yeah. The water's an interesting one. I like to drink like a nice filtered water, right? So I do have a good Berkey filter. I think there's some good mineral waters out there. If it's I don't know if you can afford it. Like Gerolsteiner has a lot of magnesium and a lot of good minerals in it. So it'd be nice if I could just drink. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
that's sort of my drink, but just
Gerolsteiner, yeah,
water.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I would be drinking a Gerolsteiner a day for sure. Actually, I think I'm just gonna start doing that. Yeah, but I also don't think I think people are obsessed with water. I think there's been this weird thing where people are like trying to drown themselves in water.
Too much water. Too
Yeah.
much water. So the recommendations of water are far too great, likely for all of us. And besides the industrialization of the food industry in the world, the industrialization of water, I'm sure you saw that the bottling of water is significantly reducing water for many local environments around the globe for those that are doing sort of small farming and things like that. It is quite amazing how we're seeing sort of the industrialization of the water as you travel to in all the places of the world.
Yeah. I mean, these like Nestle water bottle, like different brands of Nestle or Coca-Cola or whatever it is, they're everywhere. It's insane.
Well, I really appreciate you being on with us today, and we can find Brian Sanders at and look at his Food Lies. What's your website they could find you at?
Well, sapien.org kind of links out to my projects. So at sapien.org, you can find the foodlies.org website. You can find my nosetail.org website. And then, yeah, I'm just on social media at Food Lies. Just search for Food Lies on any platform, YouTube, Instagram, whatever, and I'm there.
And so we're really so grateful to you for being on with us today. And everyone out there, you got to check out Food Lies. And is there any need for, are you guys doing any funding for, social funding for
Oh,
Food Lies,
yeah.
by the way?
Yeah, absolutely. With this new intro, we were trying to get a boost of funding to help us finish it. So that's on Indiegogo, but you can link to that from foodlies.org.
Awesome. Awesome. So remind everyone again, we're going to put a link. Check out Brian Sanders. So much to learn from. And I really appreciate everyone being here today. And God bless. And thanks for all the questions. And sorry we didn't get to too many, but we got to a lot of words and inspiration from Brian. So again, thank you everyone for being here. Then Brian, thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right. Always a pleasure. God bless.